Hi, welcome to Rock and Metal Invasion. My name is Steve. Coming up on the show today, I'm doing hair metal hits, my favorite and least favorite. So I'm going to be talking about bands who had hit songs back in the 80s, early 90s when hair metal was at its most popular. A lot of these bands, of course, were just hard rock, heavy metal bands, but we now call them hair metal. And back in the 80s and early 90s, a number of these bands had hit singles. So they had songs that sort of made the top 10 singles charts, which was a big deal. So you'd have, obviously pop artists like Madonna, Bruce Springsteen on the singles charts, and with them would be some of these hair metal bands. In fact, sometimes the hair metal bands took up quite a lot of the top 10. There might be 3 or 4 hair metal bands in the top 10 singles. So, especially in the late 80s, early 90s, it got particularly popular, and of course then it started to die out pretty quickly, and when it died out, it just died. But I'm just going to go through some records that I have in my collection that have some hit singles on them. Obviously, I'm not going to do every single one, talk about every single hit single or every single band that's a hair metal band that had a hit single, but just a few that I've selected, and I'm sort of give a bit of an opinion on them. So first one I want to talk about is Motley Crue. So from Theatre of Pain, I'm going to talk about the song Home Sweet Home. Now, actually, interestingly enough, this actually wasn't a big hit. I think perhaps people thought it was because that song really set the template, I think, for those hair metal bands to release at least one ballad from their album as a single. But it did get a lot of play on MTV, and it really helped, I guess, the sales of the album. So that's sometimes something you need to think about too. So, whether it charts or not, if it gets a lot of play on music TV, then, the video gets played a lot, then that's also going to help album sales. And when you think about a band like Motley Crue, yeah, they've had some successful singles, but I often think that they're more successful as an album type band. So they sell a good amount of albums. They're less of a singles type band. And the reason for that is because MTV back in the 80s, early 90s would play their music videos, and they're quite a visual band. So, but this came out in 85, and it really helped the success of the album, got played on MTV quite a lot. And like I said, a lot of people say this sort of gave other hair metal bands the idea to always put at least one ballad on their album, and then the record company's saying, well, we've got to put that out as a single. And usually the ballad or the power ballad would be put out as the second single, or maybe the third, but it was not usually the first. You put out your rocker first, and then you'd follow up with your ballad or your power ballad. So, and there's a number of examples. So when I was going through thinking about bands, hair metal bands who had hit songs, a lot of them are ballads. And a lot of them too, that was their one hit. They just had one hit, and it was the ballad from their album. So I'm not going to go through them all, but some I selected. So Damn Yankees. So this is like a super group. Ted Nugent, of course, is in it. You've got Tommy Shaw, Jack Blades. But yeah, High Enough was the hit song of this album. But it's a good song. I don't mind it. I quite like it even. But it's not really representative of the album. It's a good hard rock album, this one. I think this album went platinum. Successful single. And the next album did okay as well, but they've only done the 2 albums. But so that's one example of a hit ballad. Slaughter from their first album. Now, their big song on here is Fly to the Angels. That was a really big one for them. I think if you go and look on YouTube or Spotify, that song is easily their most played song. Still a very popular song. They're still touring. So Fly to the Angels. Look, they did actually have another hit off this too. Their first single, so like I said, they usually would kick off with a sort of more rocking song as the first single. Up All Night was the first single, and that was successful as well. Personally, not a big fan of Up All Night or Fly to the Angels, but I do like Mad About You. But that wasn't a hit or anything, but that's a good song. But this was their first album. Of course, Dana Strum and Mark Slaughter have come from Vinnie Vincent Invasion to form this band. It's the first album, and then the next album, Wildlife, wasn't anywhere near as successful. Came out in 92, so it wasn't a great time for them. But yeah, they definitely had a big hit with this album, and Fly the Angels was probably the song that really set it off. But yeah, just another ballad. Now this one's quite a famous sort of ballad, Mr. Big. And To Be With You. I don't mind the song. Sometimes people might go, well, I didn't mind it, but then I've heard it a million times on radio. Now I can't ever listen to it again. I'm not too bad with that. If I hear a song that I like, even if I do end up hearing it quite a bit over the years, if I like it, I like it, and I didn't mind it. Like for me, to me, it's not a standout song or anything. There's much better songs on here, but obviously the mainstream, when it got on radio, it's a good radio-friendly song. It's a little bit like the song More Than Words by Extreme. I think it came out similar sort of a time, and it's that similar kind of song, very simple kind of song, catchy, very radio-friendly. And, it probably really helped the band because this is their second album, and it's another supergroup as well. You got Paul Gilbert, Billy Sheehan, Eric Martin. Of course, not necessarily representative of the band. There's, some good rocking songs on here. But, Damn Yankees, Mr. Big, they never had hits really, I don't think, with their heavier songs. It was their ballad songs, or their ballad song that was sort of made them popular. Like I say, you can kind of compare this to Extreme and More Than Words. Now, one band who were really good at being successful with ballads, and were probably the last sort of hair metal band to still be on a major label. So they put out their first 3 albums were on a major label. Their last one coming out in 1995, and each song from their 3 albums had a hit ballad on it. So Love of a Lifetime was from their first album, and that got to number 5. And this is their second album, Reach for the Sky, I think it's called. Hold Your Fire. Hold Your Fire. There's this one, so Hold Your Fire, and this song, the song from here, When I Look Into Your Eyes, is, Love of a Lifetime was from the first album, and then this one, When I Look Into Your Eyes, was their second ballad that they had a hit with. So this one got to number 8. When I Look Into Your Eyes, Firehouse, and they had another single off their third album as well. It didn't do quite as well, but it still made I think the top 30 on the Billboard Top 100, which in 1995 was a pretty good effort. Like I say, one of the last hair metal bands to still be on a major label, and I think the main reason for that is because they were able to, write and were willing to, create, ballad songs and put out ballads. And they had some success with that. Love of a Lifetime is a very popular song for people when they're getting married. So again, like Flight of the Angels, if you go and look on YouTube and Spotify and all that, millions and millions of views. But not representative of the sound. There's some good hard rock on here. Rocky Tonight, Reach for the Skies on this album. Two of my sort of go-to songs. Just another example of a band who had hits with ballads. Here's another one, lesser known band. This is Giant, Last of the Runaways. The big hit off this is I'll See You in My Dreams. It's pretty good. I like it. Again, like with a lot of these ballads, I can quite like them, but they're never usually my go-to song, my sort of standout song from the album. But I didn't mind this. This is a great band. Every song on the first side, especially on this album, is brilliant. But again, I think I'm a Believer was the first single, and that's a much heavier song. Really great guitar solo to actually kick off the song. Dan Huff on guitar, and he just rips on guitar there to kick that off. And and he's on lead vocals as well. Yeah, good album. Again, the success of that song though, helped the success of the album. It wasn't a massive seller, but definitely having that hit single helped it. But the follow-up album, which is also another good one. Again, though, we're talking 1992 when that comes out, and no hits on that one. So next I'll talk about sometimes too these hair metal bands or acts, or what we might now put in the hair metal category would get outside songwriters to help as well. So rather than just do the songwriting themselves, they might get some outside songwriters. So one guy who was a very popular choice for doing this was Desmond Child. Now, of course, he worked with Aerosmith and Bon Jovi, but he also worked with Alice Cooper, and this was a bit of a comeback for him, and he worked with him on this album, and he had a hit with the song Poison, which I think is a very good song. I still like that song, but yeah, that was and also great too. It was a hit, and it's not a ballad. Fairly hard rocking song, great riff to kick off that song. And now the song also, Poison, is actually the riff is a direct copy of the song from John Waite and the Rover's Return, which Desmond Child also worked on, the song Encircled. So the riff on Encircled, it's exactly the same as the one on the song Poison. So they just took that. Desmond Child, I guess, again, was the songwriter. So he took that part of the song and helped use that bit to create the song Poison, which he's done before. He did it with a song that he wrote for Bonnie Tyler, If You Were a Woman and I Was a Man, I think it was called, and he took an element of that and created You Give Love a Bad Name. So he has done that before. Joan Jett and the Blackhearts, now again a bit of a comeback, and again they used Desmond Child. So I Hate Myself for Loving You was a hit of this album, and yeah, like I say, a bit of a comeback. Alice Cooper hadn't had hits for a while, neither had Joan Jett, and so Desmond Child comes in and they get a hit with that song. And Desmond Child contributes a bit of songwriting on this album, and the next one as well. Next one doesn't do as good, but they're both really good albums. I'm not a massive Joan Jett fan, but the albums that she's done with Desmond Child, they're not all written by Desmond Child, but there's some contributions from him I do like, actually. And had a hit there with that one, and I quite like that song. Now I'm going to sort of talk about some bands who had hits with cover songs, and I got to say this is getting into my sort of least favorite sort of territory. Usually not something I like. Like I like Wasp, I Don't Need No Doctor. That's a great cover, but Great White. But it was a hit, and they had a hit with Once Bitten, Twice Shy. And this is a good band. I mean, they've got some good songs. The Hunter's a good song on here. I like that. Move It. Heart to Hunter. The hit song, Once Bitten, Twice Shy, which is interesting because the previous album had been called Once Bitten, and then this one's called Twice Shy, and then they've got that song on it. And so it was a hit. Which really helped the band, of course, and helped them have some success. They weren't really a singles band because a lot of their songs, they're kind of bluesy. Some of their songs are quite long, so not always that radio friendly. Yeah, they had some slower songs, they had some ballads, but they don't necessarily write short commercial songs. Cover songs, easy enough to potentially have a hit with that. So it was a hit, but I really could do with not hearing that song. Poison, Open Up and Say Ah. Now they had also had a hit with a cover song on here, and it is Mama Don't Dance. Yeah, not a big fan of this one. I think Wine Tea also covered this song. It still didn't sound any good. But I will say, now this, of course, album has quite a number of hits on it. I do like the song Nothing But a Good Time, which was the opening single. And I remember watching the music video for that and thinking, oh, wow, these guys have got a lot better, because I'd heard their first album and I thought, I don't know, it's a bit too bubblegum for me. Sure, they're not like, they haven't got super heavy or anything on this one, but it's just a little bit more metal, a little bit heavier, I feel, on this album. And like Nothing But a Good Times, great riff to kick off the song. And I also liked the second single, Fallen Angel. So the first two songs were, relatively hard rocking songs. And then, of course, they had the massive hit, again, another ballad, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, which is okay. I don't mind it. But yeah, Your Mama Don't Dance, I think that was probably the fourth single. That was also, at least here in New Zealand, that was also a hit. So they had four. Probably Fallen Angel wasn't such a big hit, but Nothing But a Good Time, Every Rose Has Its Thorn, and Your Mama Don't Dance. Here in New Zealand, they were all quite popular songs. So yeah. Next one, yeah, so again, just talking about cover songs still. So we've got Quiet Riot, and from the album Metal Health, this is Come On Feel the Noise, a cover of Slade. So I guess in some ways, Quiet Riot kind of set that off. They were one of the first hair metal bands to do it, one of the first hair metal bands to actually have a hit album, from Metal Health. But yeah, again, then you have the song Metal Health, which is a good 80s metal type song. But that wasn't as successful as Come On Feel the Noise, which was a cover song. And then they kind of faded in popularity pretty much from here. But that was their big hit, probably their one and only hit, really. And of course, they tried to repeat it again on the next album when they did Mama We're All Crazy Now, another Slade song, but it didn't catch on. All right, now I talked about Bon Jovi before. Now, when it comes to hair metal bands, they'd be one of the biggest from the 80s and had so many hits. I mean, I'm not going to talk about every single Bon Jovi hit. And of course, I did just talk about how Desmond Child worked with them, and he took a song from Bonnie Tyler and created You Give Love a Bad Name. So yeah, so that's a big hit off this album. This was the first. That was the first single from the album, and I still love that song now. I think it's a brilliant song. Living on a Prayer is like an anthem, and I think it's fantastic. Wanted Dead or Alive, the third single, also another big hit. I think that's a great ballad. So I mean, for me, the first three singles are really good, and still quite happy to hear those. And yeah, it's a great album, I think. So yeah, and then of course there's lots of other hits after that. Not all of them I like, but very successful band, of course. Another successful band, Def Leppard. Now, when this album first came out, it probably didn't instantly do as well as it ended up doing. I don't think so. They're saying includes the single Animal. Here in New Zealand, Animal wasn't the big single. I didn't really catch on. This album really took off when Pour Some Sugar on Me was released, which I like. I think it's a little bit different, and yeah, very catchy. It was a song I really liked back in the day when it came out. That is probably an example, though, of a song that I perhaps don't like quite as much as what I had liked, back in the day. But I do like it. But yeah, on the whole, this is a pretty good album. Not as good as Pyromania, but Armageddon I like. The first two songs, Woman and Rocket, I think are very good. Yeah, it's very slick production, of course. Lots been talked about that. Some people love it, some people hate it. But lots of hits off it. Massive album. Another massive album, Europe, The Final Countdown. Of course, not quite as big as Bon Jovi or Def Leppard. I think probably one of the issues for these guys was The Final Countdown, yes, was a massive song for them, but they didn't have a lot else. I mean, Rock the Night and Kerry, yes, they had some success with those songs. Kerry, I think especially, another ballad, had some charts, charted on the singles charts. But I think sometimes The Final Countdown, the song, is sort of not necessarily respected very much. It's sort of like, it perhaps does sound a little dated now as well. But, people still sometimes will use it. It's like, if, in a sporting occasion or something like that, The Final Countdown is very appropriate from time to time. So, it must be a song that they always have to play when they're in concert, but it also isn't necessarily representative, again, of their sound, especially the way it starts off. It's very iconic and very, what song it is straight away. But I think that's not always a positive thing. But yeah, and this is a good album. There's probably their biggest hit. But I think probably what just stopped them turning into Bon Jovi or Def Leppard type of successes, they didn't really have any other big hits after that one song. Right, next one, Lita. So this is just called Lita Ford, of course. Now, Kiss Me Deadly did pretty well. This is one of the singles off the album. But probably the really big song is Close My Eyes Forever, the duet she does with Ozzy Osbourne. And I love that song. I love the way it just builds. And I guess when you're talking about a power ballad, maybe that's a good example. I'm really not sure what's the difference sometimes between a power ballad and a ballad. But it sort of does build up in power, and there's a nice guitar solo in it. But I just like the two voices, Lita and Ozzy singing together. You didn't have a lot of sort of hair metal duets back in the day, so it was quite and a female male duet as well. So it was a bit different to hear that. So yeah, I like that song. It's a good one. Now, you got to call Kiss a hair metal band back in the 80s because they were doing everything all the other hair metal bands were doing. So from the album Crazy Nights, there's the song Crazy Crazy Nights. I don't know why they didn't just call the album Crazy Crazy Nights or call the song Crazy Nights, but that actually was a big hit in the UK. It wasn't a big hit here in New Zealand. I don't think in the States it was a hit either, particularly, but I think it got to like number 3 in the UK. So album on the singles charts there, so that's quite a big hit, and it's a good catchy song. It is a bit of an anthem, and I think they were still playing it from time to time in concert, and of course this album, that's when they were really trying to have some success, like some of the other hair metal bands, by being a little bit more commercial. They got Ron Neverson in to do production. It's not some people's favourite Kiss album, but I like it. I like a lot of the songs on here. Perhaps some other songs could have been used instead. But anyway, Crazy Nights, that was Crazy Crazy Nights, that was the hit from that album. Skid Row, this is their debut album, and they came out with Youth Gone Wild as their first single. And I think it probably wasn't a massive, from my understanding anyway, the way I sort of remember it, that wasn't a massive hit, but what a great song that is. So if it had been a hit, it would have been one of my favourite sort of hair metal hits, but it's probably become more popular once the band did become popular, and it took 18 in Life to really break the band, and that's another good example of a power ballad, really good power ballad song. And then more of a ballad type song, of course, I Remember You. So it's that was also a massive hit. So 18 in Life and I Remember You were huge, big hits, and really broke Skid Row big time, back in the day. So those two songs, I really like 18 in Life. I Remember You, for me, is just your standard sort of ballad, and not a song I particularly get excited about hearing. But yeah, Youth Gone Wild I really like. The opening song on this album, Big Guns, I like as well. That wasn't, I don't think that was released as a single, but I do remember back in the day having a T-shirt, and it had a lady on the front of the T-shirt with she had quite big breasts, but she also had a gun. So it was literal and a metaphor. So it was a very hair metal thing to do. It's like, no, we're not talking about her breasts. She's actually got a gun in her hand, and it says Big Guns. But I think we know what you're really talking about. But there we go. All right, next up, Twisted Sister and Stay Hungry. So, this had two really well-known songs or hit songs on it, especially We're Not Gonna Take It, but also I Wanna Rock. That was quite successful as well. That was the follow-up after We're Not Gonna Take It. And I remember not even being into hard rock or heavy metal when this came out, and sort of seeing the music videos and hearing the songs and quite liking We're Not Gonna Take It and I Wanna Rock. And even getting this album, I think I picked it up like a little while after it'd come out, got it fairly cheap, and I didn't like it. But then I didn't even know I liked hard rock or heavy metal at that point. So I was like, maybe I don't like heavy metal. I don't know what I did with it or whatever. But I didn't really. This wasn't the album that got me into heavy metal or hard rock. because this is one of the first ones I ever heard, and it didn't make me think, oh, I like hard rock or heavy metal, because some of the other songs, they're quite heavy, or they're definitely not commercial, and catchy. But yeah, I mean, I like it now, but yeah, back in the day, it just it didn't quite gel with me. But the two singles did, and actually, interesting too. They've got a great ballad on here called "The Price," and I'm sort of surprised that wasn't more of a hit. I don't think it was much of a big hit when you consider those first two songs were probably bigger hits for them. And then, of course, after this album, they're a little bit like Quiet Riot, just diminishing returns, really. And but yeah, they were huge in '84 when this came out. But yeah, also interesting for me, it wasn't the album that got me into hard rock or heavy metal, but I do like it now. But yeah. One song that is infamous for Warrant is, of course, the title track from Cherry Pie. So, yeah, I think what happened here was Jani Lane took the album to the record company, and I think they were keen on Uncle Tom's Cabin being the first single. And the record company said, we're not sure there's really a hit here. Can you go and write us a single, a hit single? So, yeah, that's what Jani Lane did. I think he did it really quickly. He came up with the song Cherry Pie, and yeah, ended up being huge. But of course, again, a little bit like, some of the other songs I've talked about, where you could say More Than Words, you could say To Be With You, you could say The Final Countdown, where people know them, but it's sort of like, is it a good song to have attached to your band? Is it representative of your sound? And yeah, I sometimes think, Jani Lane sort of would talk about how he's known as the Cherry Pie guy. And, it's like not a positive thing. I think when you think about it, the band sometimes didn't do themselves any favors, with their image and the way they act. I mean, just look at the back cover there with the Cherry Pie girl and her current position there. But, this is a good album. There's some good songs on here, and I don't mind Cherry Pie. I think it's actually, quite an original song in some ways. It's catchy. Uncle Tom's Cabin is the go-to song. It's the best song on the album, but I don't mind Cherry Pie, and I can understand Uncle Tom's Cabin perhaps doesn't seem like a hit song, while Cherry Pie just instantly seemed like, oh, that could be a hit, very catchy and everything, and yeah, it was. But also Warrant had some hits, of course, previous to this album, especially Heaven on their previous album was a hit, and I Saw Red's a good song as well that's on this album. I'm not sure how much of a hit that one was, but that's a really good ballad. Yeah, anyway, Warrant and Cherry Pie. White Lion, they had a hit with Wait, and then also When the Children Cry. So, yeah, I like Wait, it's a good song, but for me, I don't think, again, it really is representative of the band. Songs like Hungry, Lonely Nights, they're my go-to songs when it comes to White Lion, and they had some success in the late 80s, but they never got massive. But yeah, like I say, they did have I think Wait was the song that sort of gotten some attention, and then also When the Children Cry, which is very much a ballad type song, probably their most successful album. Right, and then just a couple bands who had success when they were, a band that had been around in the 70s and early 80s, but then they sort of take on the hair metal image and sound. Of course, Whitesnake, they were massive in 1987 with this album, and the big hit was, well, there's a couple, but Here I Go Again was massive, and of course, Is This Love, the ballad. But Here I Go Again is actually, they're remaking their own song. So Here I Go Again had been on a previous Whitesnake album, but it gets re-recorded. They get the big fancy MTV friendly music video. Tawny Kitaen, of course, is in the music video. She looks amazing. David Coverdale's got the rock star poses down. He's got a new band, not the band that played on the album, but he's got a totally new image and everything. And it's a good album. This is really good, but Here I Go Again, I don't mind hearing. I think, I think there's a couple of lyrical changes, but nothing too major. But otherwise, it's a good song. They also redo a song that they did before called "Crying in the Rain." They'd done that song before as well, so that was interesting. But of course, the one, it wasn't as big a hit as Is This Love or Here I Go Again, but it was a single still of the night. Again, probably not radio friendly because it's quite long, but that is an amazing song. Still stands up for me, that song. So yeah, Whitesnake and their 1987 album, and just a similar band. Heart. I'm just not going to talk about individual songs, but they of course were around in the 70s, and then put some albums out in the early 80s that hadn't done much. But then they really, on these three albums, they really, whether they're hair metal or not, I guess is also debatable. But you can see they're really changing their image. They get Ron Neverson in to help with production, and they get Mutt Lange in to help with the songwriting on this album. So all these three albums are big for them. And I actually quite like the radio songs from, the hit songs from those albums. I actually think they're quite good. But I don't know if that's the majority feel that way. All right, last two. Jackal. Now, these last two bands actually were having success as a hair metal band, what we would call hair metal, in 1992, which is a little bit late, just when hair metal was about to die out. But yeah, Jackal, they had some success with the song The Lumberjack, and it's a bit of a gimmick song really because it's got the chainsaw going off. But yeah, and I never particularly liked it as a song, but it did help the band have some success. I guess with a band like this and the next band as well, I think what helped their success is, unlike some of the previous hair metal bands, they didn't take themselves too seriously. And I think that really helped them be accepted. They were just sort of joking around a little bit. The lyrics are still very hair metal. I mean, there's a song on here called She Loves My Cock. I mean, that's just, but it's almost like Steel Panthers type lyrics, eh? Yeah, but I Stand Alone, that's a great song. Yeah. And yeah, so a similar band, Ugly Kid Joe, this is from America's Least Wanted. So their big hit was Everything About You, which I don't mind, it's an okay song. But yeah, often, with a lot of these songs I've been talking about, whether I might have liked the song, it was a hit, but there's often there's better songs on the album. And yeah, for me, my favorite is probably Neighbor. But also they did actually have I think they had some hit on here as well. Yeah, Cats in the Cradle, which is a cover song. That was also a bit of a hit for them as well. But yeah, America's Least Wanted, and yeah, that came out in 1992. Again, not taking himself too seriously. I think that kind of helped bands like Jackal and Ugly Kid Joe sort of survive the death of hair metal, at least for a little while. All right, so there we go. And as you can see, there were a lot of hits back in the day, and I could keep going, but we've already done sort of half an hour, so I'll stop here. But just thought I'd go through some of the hits from back in the day that we would now put in the hair metal genre or category, and just give you some opinions on them. Let me know what you think. Do you like those songs? Are you sick of hearing them and don't want to ever hear them again? Maybe I'll do a show sometime too where I'll talk about songs that should have been hits or should have been released as singles, and they could have potentially had hits, but they weren't put out as singles or didn't have videos made for them, because there's a number of those, I'm sure. All right, thanks for watching. If you haven't subscribed and you like this type of content, make sure you hit the subscribe button, hit the thumbs up, and yeah, always happy to see comments, and always love replying to those comments. So feel free to leave a comment. All right, that's it for now. We'll see you later.